So since that time period, since environmentalism started to grow in the 1960s, especially as we saw the effects of industrial pollution. Uh, DDT example was harming birds, and that led to like Rachel Carson writing and creating the EPA. Like that kind of created outrage for that. And then also we had the first indications of climate change, where the early scientists were kind of putting it together, saying like the track we're on is not a good one. Like we're going to eventually get to really bad times with climate change, and we're starting to see some of those predictions come true today. So as those early concerns about the environment came up, socialists tried to integrate that into their point of view. And like I said, Bookchin was one of the first with social ecology. He described social ecology as a synthesis of Marxist and anarchist thought. So he was trying to combine the issues, that kind of dialectical thinking we were talking about, right? Like there's some kind of contradictions, there's some disagreements here. How can we kind of put those together and try to get the best of both worlds, right? To try to really create a new movement. And let's base that in ecology while we're at it. Let's make sure that environmental concerns, ecology concerns, are a first class issue, or like a number one issue as part of that movement. It was strongly influenced by a lot of the socialist philosophers that we were talking about earlier. Bookchin essentially used philosophy and science to kind of develop a set of ecological ethics to guide human behavior and to guide our organizing efforts. So lost my place there. So he proposed what he called libertarian municipalism as the praxis, as the way that we should act in order to reach social ecology. And what that municipalism is very bottom up sort of thing of creating community assemblies and people essentially getting together, making decisions for themselves, kind of like a labor union would, but like instead of in a workplace, you're doing it kind of in a community. So it has a lot in common with other libertarian socialist ideas of kind of bottom-up organizing. Another group that came about, I think a little bit more recently, was kind of this eco-Marxist trend where folks went back to revisit Marx's earlier works and found that Marx actually was talking about the environment in his earlier works. And he talked about the metabolic rift, for example, between industrialism and nature. And you had other groups like the IWW. We had the quote from them where they mentioned living in harmony with the earth. Yeah, exactly. So actually, even though unfortunately a lot of the early 1900s socialist parties and all had kind of sidelined and ignored environmentalism, there is a trend of environmentalism through a lot of Marxist thinking and analysis that did exist there, but was unfortunately ignored. And so there's this movement now to kind of reanalyze that and kind of bring it into modern socialist movements. And one of the most recent books was by Saito. I forget what the name of the book is. I think it's Marx and the Anthropocene.
Karl Marx's Ecosocialism is one of them too. By
Saito. Yeah. But I like this one because he argues for what he calls communist degrowth. That capitalism is obsessed with growth, economic growth, right? And of course, that economic growth means using more and more resources. It's unsustainable, both on humans and on nature. So is arguing for what's known as degrowth, that instead of our economy relying on growth to create wealth, to end poverty, that we have to create a sustainable system that ends poverty. So we're seeing kind of more discussion and debate over how to do ecology in socialism.